You're listening to Audiology. Support our work on Patreon and be sure to submit your requests for topics in the comments below. In the world of politics and governance, there exists a method called the spoils system, also known as the patronage system. This approach sees a political party that has emerged victorious in an election rewarding its supporters, friends, and family members with government jobs. This act serves both as a gesture of thanks for their efforts in securing the win and as motivation to continue supporting the party. This system is in stark contrast with a merit-based system, where jobs and promotions within the government are determined by an individual's qualifications and achievement rather than their political affiliations. The concept of the spoils system is most notably associated with the political scene in the United States. This system was prevalent until 1883, when reforms led by a civil service movement brought about the Pendleton Act. This act marked a significant shift towards a system where federal jobs were filled and promotions were made based on merit rather than political connections. The origins of the term spoils system are quite interesting. It is traced back to a remark made by Senator William L. Marcy of New York. He used the phrase, "To the victor belong the spoils," in reference to Andrew Jackson's electoral victory in 1828. Here, spoils refers to the benefits or loot that the winner takes from their competitor in any kind of contest, whether that be in politics, sports, or war. It's also worth noting that while the spoils system is particularly highlighted in the context of the United States, similar systems have been found in other countries, often where society is traditionally organized around tribal or familial lines and local allegiances. It's often thought that President Andrew Jackson was the first to bring the spoils system into American politics, but the facts tell a different story. The practice of rewarding loyal supporters with government jobs has been around since colonial times. In fact, it started to shape United States politics during George Washington's presidency, where there was a noticeable preference for members of the Federalist Party. Washington, along with his successors, John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, have all been pointed to as possible originators of the spoils system. By the year 1828, when power was being passed from one president to another, people expected things to go smoothly. This expectation wasn't necessarily because politicians were more ethical back then, but rather because there hadn't been a change in political parties since the election of 1800. During that year, the exiting Federalist Party made significant moves to keep their influence alive through federal appointments right up to the last minute. By the year 1816, the Federalist Party was out of the picture, leading to a period where the Democratic-Republican Party ruled without opposition. The split in the Democratic-Republican Party after the 1824 election, however, reintroduced a two-party system. Jackson's inauguration in 1829 was a landmark moment. It was the first time since 1801 that the presidency had passed to a different party. The event attracted many hopeful office seekers, portraying their presence as a sign of Democratic enthusiasm. Jackson had made numerous job promises in exchange for political support, and he followed through on these by removing nearly 10% of all government employees, which totaled 919 officials. The goal of the Jackson administration was to create a more efficient government by ensuring all public employees followed orders from their superiors. The post office, the largest department in the government, saw the most significant change, with 423 postmasters, many of whom had served well, losing their jobs in just 1 year. Despite the high number of dismissals, Jackson's approach to replacing officials with his own supporters wasn't much different from his predecessors. In the late 1860s, people really began to push for changes in the way government jobs were distributed. This demand for change grew significantly louder after President James A. Garfield was assassinated in 1881 by Charles J. Guiteau, who was upset about being rejected for a job. In response to this tragedy and the increasing calls for reform, the Pendleton Act was passed in 1883. This act established a bipartisan civil service commission that would select job candidates based on their abilities, not their political connections. Initially, the act did not cover many jobs, but it granted the president the authority to safeguard jobs by placing them under this merit system, essentially allowing those in the jobs to retain them permanently. Over time, particularly as the White House changed hands between the two main political parties from 1884 to 1896, the act was applied more extensively. Presidents often utilized it to secure positions for their political supporters as they left office. By 1900, the majority of federal jobs were filled through this merit system, significantly reducing the influence of the old spoils system, where jobs were allocated as rewards. However, the Pendleton Act did not immediately alter state patronage systems or all federal positions. According to Carabel, it played a significant role in establishing a professional civil service and laying the foundation for today's bureaucratic state, even influencing how political campaigns were funded. Parties could no longer depend on federal appointees for campaign funds and had to turn to wealthy donors instead. The division between political work and civil service jobs became even clearer with the Hatch Act of 1939, which prohibited federal employees from engaging in many types of political activities. But the spoils system did not disappear uniformly everywhere. In some states, counties, and municipalities, it persisted for much longer, like New York City's Tammany Hall political machine, which was not dismantled until the 1950s. Illinois reformed its system in 1917 under Frank Lowden, yet Chicago maintained its patronage system in city government until it agreed to halt in the Shachtman decrees of 1972 and 1983. Thanks for watching. Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more content.